Welcome back to talknorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com.
And happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome into another edition here of the Strom Sports Show. Steven Strom here at TalkNorth.com. Big thanks to my producer, as always, Brandon Morton, and my guy, Jim Suhan. If you want to advertise with us, just click on TalkNorth.com. You have Jim Suhan's email and all of that good stuff. We got a busy show for you guys today. Negative Dave checks in, talks about the red-hot Minnesota Twins, and I know everyone, I don't know if you guys want to get excited or not yet. I know it's only a couple games in, but hey, it's always funny because if you get off to a bad start, right, and if, say, the Twins were like 0-4 right now, everyone would be freaking out. We stink. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. Rocco Baldelli, this, that, and the whole 9 yards. But now that they're 3-1, it's okay. Calm down. It's the Twins. Calm down. So baseball is very hypocritical that way in terms of whenever you get off to a good start, you're saying it's too early, and whenever you get off to a bad start, you're saying, well, the season's over after a week. So we'll obviously get into the Twins. The Wild out of the playoffs, first time here in 6 years, 6 straight appearances snapped. We'll have Michael Russo coming on to break that all down, kind of recap the season, see his thoughts, because, I want to see what he feels, because as a journalist, you get into the same groove every year, and you cover a team come April for the playoffs. Russo's not going to have that, so we'll get his thoughts on that. What went wrong this year? Because there's a boatload of things. There's injuries. There's guys that just didn't play up to par. Devin Dubnyk had a statistically worst year as a Minnesota Wild member. So there was a bunch of things that really went on this year. You never felt like this team was going to break through. Maybe a couple of times when that trade with Donato and they started to win 3-4 in a row, maybe you thought, okay, they've got something going. But at the end of the day, Colorado they played great hockey. You can't take away from what they did towards the end of the season. I mean, Colorado goes 7-1-2. That is their record in their last 10 games here. They beat the Wild, obviously. They beat Dallas. They beat Vegas. They beat Arizona. They get a point against St. Louis. Colorado played so much better than the Wild did down the stretch, and that's where it matters. Obviously, the Wild, who have limped home this season, 4-5-1 in their last 10, losses to Colorado, Carolina, Arizona, Nashville, all games that, listen, and I've always told this to people, there's no secret for the teams that make the playoffs, okay? You either win these types of games or you don't show up. And that's where you get your determination of if a team is a postseason team or not. And for right now, and for this season, when the Wild needed to step up the most this year, they didn't deliver. And that's the reality of the season. That's just the bottom line. I can't get into every detail with you guys about why this, yes, injuries, it hurt this team. Okay, Matt Dumba going down, yes, it hurt this team. Dumba, I've been saying it. Dumba is the best player on that team. Dumba is the most exciting. He's a guy that you have to have. He creates for others. He hits. He's tough. He's just a bolt of energy that really, it's a boring Wild team without him. Matt Dumba was really the only guy that he's, and I'm not a huge fan of flashy guys and obviously McDavid's incredible, but, for the most part, I'm not a huge fan of the flashy player that's going between the legs and that's doing all this crazy nonsense. Well, for some teams, it's good because it spices you up. It doesn't, you're not boring. And Matt Dumba does that to this Wild team. So obviously losing him, it was huge. You totally felt like his presence was missed from the start. And this is a guy who, he had 13, 14 goals. I mean, he was on pace to score 30 goals as a defenseman. It was incredible. And then obviously the Mikko Koivu injury. Look, the guy, and I'm not a big fan of him, okay? So I'm not going to sit here and say, Mikko Koivu went out, that's when the season was over. But, he is important to this team, okay? He doesn't put up the numbers, yes, but he's a face-off guy, he's a good defensive guy, and he is your captain, okay? Anytime you lose a captain to injury, it's going to hurt your team. The trades. And this is where, you really start to question management. What Paul Fenton did at the time, trading for Victor Rask, you thought to yourself, okay, this is 1v1, this is an even trade. You looked at their stats. Nino was not the same. Obviously, I don't know if it was battling injury. Maybe his time in Minnesota got stale. I don't know. But as soon as he gets traded to Carolina, he turns into the Nino Niederreiter that Wild fans expected and what the organization needed if they wanted to move forward in the playoffs. This was a guy that just kind of felt like he was stuck in the mud for season after season. And then you get Victor Rask, who comes to Minnesota and has 1 goal and 1 assist in 21 games, while Nino Niederreiter's got 10 to 15 goals in Carolina. It's incredible. It's like these trades, man. And maybe it's just me. Every time the Wild gets one of these guys, the player on the Wild that they traded always ends up being the better one. Brett Burns for Charlie Coyle. Brett Burns is one of the best defensemen in the league. Charlie Coyle, he was traded this year. Victor Rask from Nino Niederreiter. Victor Rask was horrible. And Nino Niederreiter goes to Carolina and ignites them. I mean, it's crazy. The luck that this franchise had. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But the trades, obviously the one that saved Fenton was the Ryan Donato trade. Great trade. Okay, phenomenal. The kid's been great. 4 goals, 12 assists in 20 games. He really, for the most part, he kept the Wild afloat in that playoff race. When he first got to Minnesota and they started to win these games, Ryan Donato was scoring a point in every one of these games, and you kind of thought, okay, maybe this is the jolt that they needed. Remember when they got Devin Dubnyk a few years ago and they needed a goaltender, and the Wild got hot, and they ended up actually beating St. Louis in the first round? Sometimes you need that player at the trade deadline to kind of kickstart your team and maybe get to a postseason. So when this was happening with Donato, I thought, man, this can be really good. This can be a kid that he's 22 years old, and the Bruins are just going to give up on him. And I still kind of question, why did this kid not have a spot in that lineup? I know Boston's great, but boy, this kid, he's really good. So, he went 1 for 2, okay? And the Fiala for Granlund. Granlund hasn't done much in Nashville, and Fiala, look, he's another young guy. Look, Fenton wanted to get young here, and he did, okay? And the risk, and this is what we all talked about coming into this season with the Wild, because you knew Eric Stahl, he overachieved, right? 40 goals last year, you couldn't expect anything more than that. Parisi getting old, and he just can't stay healthy, and I love the guy, okay? He's a hard worker. I never question his effort, but he's just never healthy. Jason Zucker up and down, Mikko Koivu getting older, Ryan Suter getting older. In order for this team to have success this year, and this was different this year because of your older guys getting, older, you needed to have those younger guys step up, meaning Jordan Greenway, meaning Joel Eriksson Ek, meaning Luke Cunnin. And when you look at their stats, and they're 22, okay? Don't jump on me. And I know you hockey fanatics are going to, he's only this. But seriously, let's really look at these numbers. Joel Eriksson Ek had 6 goals and 7 assists in 55 games. Is that what we're gonna get from Joel Eriksson Ek? Even Jordan Greenway, and I really liked him this year. I thought he looked like he made a jump. But 12 goals, 12 assists in 78 games, it's not cutting it if you want to talk about the postseason. And this was the risk coming into this year, was that you needed your younger players, and just like a lot of teams, there's no secret to making the playoffs. I've already said it. You need your old guys to play well, and you need your young players to develop into 20, 25 goal scorers. There's no reason why Joel Eriksson Ek can't score 15, 20 goals. There's no reason why Greenway can't score 15 to 20 goals. And it didn't happen this year. Devin Dubnyk, who doesn't love Dubs, okay? He's a guy that a lot of times doesn't get enough credit. There's a lot of times where fans hammer him. Look, Dubnyk is an up-and-down goalie, okay? But for the most part, he's been really good for this team. Really good. This year, statistically speaking, this was his quote-unquote worst year as a Wild member. 2.56 goals against, which isn't terrible. The .912 save percentage isn't very good, and it's not Devin Dubnyk-like, but once you really kind of take a breath and say, okay, let's look at the stats. Let's look at why this happened. Why didn't the Wild make the playoffs? Well, too many up and down games by Devin Dubnyk. I'll never forget, and this is where the first red flag for me with the Wild was in February, when the Wild were up 4-1 going into the third against the Devils. And the Devils ended up scoring 3 in the third and then winning in overtime. That's when I thought, okay, this team they don't have it this year. They're just not the same team. They're not structured. That would never happen. Never, ever, ever, ever happen. A 4-1 lead with the structured defense, that would never happen. This is the sad truth, okay? The Wild are 2-6 in playoff series in the Parise and Suter era. 0 finishers. It's the same problems every single year. I just don't think Parise and Suter are good enough to build around in terms of if you really think that they're going to get to a Stanley Cup. I'm sorry. I just don't think these are the two that are going to be able to do it anymore. It might be a blessing in disguise to miss the playoff, but either way, let's ask ourselves this question. Are the Wild, or were the Wild, going to beat Winnipeg, Calgary, or Nashville in the best of 7? The Wild have been a sacrificial lamb the last 3 years in the first round. 4-1, 4-1, 4-2. They haven't been close. Maybe this is the wake-up call this organization needs. Negative Dave, he is up next.
Minnesota has sure had its share of sports blunders.
Number one is the Bopsy twins, Felvey and Levine. Because I think it's one guy. And I think the other guy that show you on pictures or in the media is just some bobo that he's just like the janitor or something. They just throw a suit on him.
Nobody breaks them down quite like Steve and Dave.
This year, when you signed Kirk Cousins, the question wasn't even close to being if this team makes the playoffs. The question was, you need to get home field because of what happened last year in Philly.
Let's rave with Negative Dave. Take it away, fellas.
Where do we start today? I mean, you've got a bunch of stuff going on. I mean, we've got the Wild, we've got the Red Hot Twins, we've got Pitino going to Arkansas. Right. Oh, my goodness.
What?
Well, he's interviewing. He's interviewing at the University of Arkansas.
No, I didn't even know that.
That's why I told you today we're going to have to get into Pitino.
I was wondering why you wanted to talk about that, Bobo.
Yeah.
He's releasing the old. So he's so cocky.
I know he is. I know he is.
What? Here's the problem. You like him.
I do.
You have stuck up for him. You have stuck up for him for weeks since I started doing this show, and this guy he's just like his dad. You are so young and fooled again.
No, I'm not. I'm telling you, he's a bright coach. He's a good coach. But what he's doing right now, all right, so do we want to get into Pitino first? We'll get into Pitino first.
You
and then
start with
we'll get into Pitino first, and then we'll work our way down here. We've got a good 15 minutes here today. Okay,
right.
So first of all, this is upsetting to me because, Dave, Minnesota, the university, has stuck through the allegations with Reggie Lynch, with the losing season a year ago and 3 years ago before that. Listen, we have stuck by Richard Pitino, okay? And now he wins one game, and now he thinks he's going to go to University of Arkansas? I mean, it's just, I don't know. It just kind of seems like, well, where's your loyalty at? And it is frustrating. And I do admit that this definitely made me upset when I saw it because I guess he wants to use some leverage and get an interview at, he interviewed at the University of Arkansas.
I can't believe he's doing this.
I can't either.
I didn't even see the news. When did this come out?
This came out yesterday, yeah.
Oh, I just knew it was going to happen, too.
And coffee.
Let him go. Let him go.
Yeah, no. This is the problem, though, Dave. In order to build a program, a basketball program, you get your recruits, which he's done. He got Gabe Kauster and Daniel Oturu after their freshman year. He's going to dip and he's going to leave. And what's next? I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's frustrating because just when you think this program is building towards something, Amir Coffey has a great year. They win a tournament game. And, you look forward to next year. It's like it can all be erased with Pitino leaving and now Coffey's entering the draft.
Let me ask you this. Okay, 8-10.
Yeah.
In a tough conference. Okay, I get it. 8-10. He beats a Louisville team that really wasn't that good. Did they have an injury?
No, but they weren't. I mean,
playing bad.
They were playing bad. They lost 8 of their last 12 going into the tournament.